George asked me to show some pictures of a trip that I have taken in the summer, but I asked the people present here, would they be more interested in showing a number of pictures around and discussing a little bit of what I have done to those pictures from having taken them out of the camera until I show it to the people. So that's what I'm going to do. For each photo, well, there's one here before. I very strongly recommend it to everybody who likes to take photos. First of all, to learn how to express yourself with your pictures and how to make that happen with the software that, generally speaking, the Mac does best. Although Photoshop runs the same on Mac and PC, you find a lot more of the high-end photographers using the Mac. So this is, in that sense, a Mac topic, but to some extent it's a bit more universal. To pick up from the scene what impressed you with the scene and to convey that to those people who will look at your picture, particularly the emotion that made you take the picture, and I'm not talking about big emotions here, just was it the color that really caught you? Then you want a picture where you emphasize the color. Was it the structure of the bridge that impressed you? Then you want to make sure that the structure emerges. Most of all, you want to assure that your picture has some impact right away as people look at it, so that they look, keep their eyes on it, and enjoy its composition and its technical quality. So impact, composition, technical quality are very important, and I'm a very, very strong supporter of joining the club to learn from colleagues, from people who present there, and gain experience. Two clubs in Naples, rather than spending time on them, you can find on the internet their address, dipsig.org and naplescameraclub.com. They both have either one or two meetings a month and arrange for trips, get critiques, and more importantly, particularly Naples, but both clubs participate in statewide and nationwide competitions. So you have a chance to put your pictures into competitions where you're competing with people from all around. Most of the pictures I selected to show you won some kind of acknowledgement, some kind of acceptance in those competitions. So for each of the photo, I will show you how it came out of the camera, or most of them I can show you how it came out of the camera and expect huge differences. I will only generally explain. I'm not going to go into step by step. I did this, and that. But what did I want to bring out of the picture, and what did I have to change in order for that to happen? Ask questions as we go. And the way I intend to go is I show you 20-some pictures in rapid succession with very few words, and then we can go back to any one or all, depending on time, how many of those pictures, and discuss them in more detail. So remember those words. You want impact, you want a pleasing composition, good technical quality, and in order to achieve that, you need vision, technique, and judgment. The people generally who come joining the club have good vision, but poor technique, or have good technique, but not so good vision. And by learning, judging other people, seeing other pictures, learn to have both. I myself was an engineer. I was much better with the technique than with the vision, and trying to improve my vision in the process. So with that, I'll go to my next one. Hopefully I can find it. I just neatly put them here, and we are not there. The first one is a familiar picture, at least to members. It's a picture I took to replace the almost 15 to 12 years old or whatever picture from our website. Our client was Jerry, and I went out to take a picture. I went home with about, I don't know how many, but dozens, and not one of them that I liked. But there were two of them put together that would work well, and that's this one. It is composed of two pictures. The interesting part here is that a sunset, if you present it to a competition, should have a lot of impact. I felt that I have to compromise between impact and some kind of message that Jerry wants to put from the club, which was happy, bright, summery here in Naples. So if I did that picture for another purpose, it would be a much darker, much more contrast. But working with Jerry, we arrived at the one that's on the website to invite the people, have enough impact to catch the eye, and have a feeling of a lighter atmosphere. Yes?
Mitch, I just have a general question. When you're doing pictures like this, and you're going to submit them for competition,
Yeah.
are you allowed to doctor them any way you want, combine as many pictures as you want?
That's it.
And the second question is that can someone who is a professional look at that picture and say, that's more than one picture? Because there's a lot of pictures floating around there where you see somebody in the picture, and they're really not there. And I understand that in a lab or something they can tell it, but
The rules are different today than they were half a year ago,
Yeah.
and they will be half a year from now.
Okay.
For competition, you carefully read the competition rules, and you obey them. And different competitions have different rules. Our clock here is lined up with the Florida, lined up with the Florida Club of Clubs, so that what we prepare for this club is good for the other. The Naples Camera Club is more lined up with PSA, which is the Photo Society of America, which has slightly different rules, and they tend to submit to that. My personal intention is not to make visible that I photoshopped the picture. In other words, nobody should say, that's a great Photoshop job. But I want people to say that's a great picture, rather than that's a great Photoshop. Yes?
George Mosher, what do you mean, Bob, when you say it's a great Photoshop job? Yeah, especially if somebody doesn't know the application Photoshop.
Photoshop is a verb as well.
Like twerking?
Like famous from the Soviets are chasing hats.
Okay, so what do you
so
mean
on.
about?
What I consider 9 out of 10 people would not see it. The other one who would have to look at it carefully to find it. and
And it just means an edited photo.
it means an edited photo. My own intent is when I edit, I can stack them and see. I put the original on the top, and that makes it typically very close to what the original was. Now, when I do 2 or 3, I tell the people. So there's another one where I have 3, another C-scale. This picture was not a competition, a monthly theme in the club, and the theme was door. I went this was taken at Corkscrew, got home, and as you will see the picture, a lousy little picture, you couldn't even see the door. So I put that color on the door, and I started to like the picture, and later on, I wanted to change it to black and white. That was too dull, and I came up with this. This one won Best of Show in Marco Island in 2008. That's an old picture.
Bravo. Nice.
The judge was Connie Brand Silver. This picture is was taken in Fort Myers, Lakes Park. I liked it from the very beginning, but something was missing. That's also about 3 years old picture, and I just couldn't figure out what. And not long ago, maybe half a year ago, I opened it, and I did 2 things to this picture. I intensified the green, and you might see a little path coming down from the tree. That was not there. That was dark. So the bottom of the picture was gray, just a big mess of brown there. Still, it did get 2 blue ribbons, both our local and our statewide competition. The blue, by the way, these competitions go in about 100 to 150 people typically locally, 200 over statewide, and 10% gets blue ribbon, and 15% gets yellow ribbon. So blue ribbon means upper 10%, yellow ribbon means upper 25, and the upper 25.
Where was this place in Fort Myers? What was the name of the place?
Lakes Park?
Lakes Park?
Yeah. It's a beautiful place. It's a good mixture of some untouched territory and some very developed. There's a botanical garden there. There is a place for kids to play. There's boating. Very nice place. I have another picture from there. This is my current pride. I took this picture at a photo trip organized by the Leica people in Miami. Not that I photographed with Leica, but they let people use their cameras on the trip. However, this one I took with my own camera. It's a sunrise picture, and I will show you in detail more about this one. It was the trip to Glacier National Parks, after which George asked me to show the pictures. The next 4 is from that trip. This road is called Going to the Sun Road, based on a Native Indian folklore of some sort. My daughter was driving the car. We were with a photo group. My daughter was driving the car. I was sitting in the passenger seat when I took this picture, about an hour before I faked it.
Did you take this picture through the car window?
Yeah.
Amazing.
There was a little problem in this area here that I had to remove, but no, I did not have any. When you take pictures through an airplane window, or a car window, if you drive up the contrast, you get most of the original scene back. This is another picture taken there. It's not sharp enough really in projection, but I turned this black and white. I like this clouds, which came out much nicer in black and white than in color. But I kept the color for the two kayaks. So that's this one. This is more colorful, more the impression, not necessarily the exact colors, but the impression that you get with the color dominating the scene. And what you enjoy there is all the colors.
That's unbelievable. It almost feels like part of it's jumping out of the screen.
Well, that's another thing that very often you have to do, and your camera does not do for you. And so you do it in, by the way, I don't like the word editing. I much prefer the term developing, because basically, just 1 second, I will, that you have, one thing you lose is the 3 dimensions. So your eye picks up 3 dimensions in life from many, many, many different signals. They're clues. And the more of those clues you can put back in your picture when you develop it, the more you can get that feeling. And that's one of the reasons why I go in to these pictures to get that. Yes?
What type of camera do you use?
These cameras, these pictures that I have shown so far were all taken with a Nikon digital SLR.
Very nice.
And the camera varied. My current camera is a rather expensive full-frame digital camera, but most of the other pictures were with older versions of the Nikon digital SLR. Yes?
George Dorner, you shoot in JPEG or RAW?
I shoot in RAW,
Thank you.
but there are some pictures here that were shot in JPEG. I will try to remember and point it out.
But, George Bob, would you clarify what RAW is for people who haven't taken your many courses?
Yeah. The RAW, when you take a picture in the camera, there's an electronic sensor that picks up those how many million megapixels that you have taken. That's each point, each of those millions or tens of millions of points recorded for color, intensity in the camera. And in the raw output from the camera, you get every one of those points. If you shoot JPEG, the camera will process the picture. Will do like the job the Photoshops did the processing for you. You have no control over it, and about 75%, roughly, I'm not sure, but somewhere very, very high percentage of that data is thrown out. You never get it. With the RAW, you get it all, and what you throw out is your choice. So the human eye, you don't lose in that sense. The human eye cannot pick up all that many information. But when you develop your pictures, then you choose where you have detail, more detail, and where you don't. Where you have more contrast, and where you don't. Typically, JPEG throws away a lot of the very bright and very dark areas. So if you want to get more detail out of a dark area that you took with a JPEG mode, you have difficulties. You have noise, which is just like TV noise used to be, the snow and that kind of thing. and makes the picture less enjoyable. Or on the bright side, you just simply lose the information. Just like if a bucket overflows, you will never know how much water you lost. The information is lost, whether it's raw or not. So you will see when I show my pictures that I tremendously underexposed a lot of my pictures, because I know with a good camera I can get the detail out without disturbing the amount of noise. On the other hand, if I overexpose, I don't get any detail. This was a scene in Glaciers National Park, a little creek, beautiful crystal clear water, the sun shining on the stones. I went back next day to take the same pictures and there was no sun. The sun was shining, but not the same way. Couldn't take anything. But I like this picture very much. This one is off Route 41, and this was taken with my full-frame camera. And I'd like to ask a question. How many of you kind of saw what this is at the time when you looked at it right away? Could you see what this picture is?
What's your question?
My question is that when I look at this, I see the water, I see the reflection, and I see the trees. But when I originally looked at it, I could not see it, even on my own picture. The dimensions, the trees sticking out of the water did not show up.
So this is just cropped.
I did a lot of things to do that. The water is shinier, and the part of the tree that's out of the water is duller, which was, the distinction was not there in the original, as I will show it to you. But I just wanted to know, because one of the difficulties, that's where the judgment comes in. When you look at your picture, you see a lot more than anybody else would. Because you have seen this, being at the scene, and your mind picks it up right away. You don't see with your eyes. They are better binoculars to the brain. And it's your brain where you interpret it, and the brain right away will interpret it with all the information it has.
So you created the reflection,
No, the reflection was there,
but you couldn't see it?
but you could not really see the reflection. You could not see the difference between the part of the tree that was a reflection versus the tree, part of the tree that stuck out. And I'm just worried about, because I consider this a beautiful picture with the reflection and a moderately acceptable picture from composition point of view. So the composition doesn't help picking up the dimensions. That's why I'm asking whether you did or did not pick it up. This is also a Naples area, very little known place. It's called Bird Rookery. It's off Immokalee Road, a totally undeveloped area with wild animals and nothing there except for a few signs that help you come out of there if you get lost. This stuff was touched by human. So it's a very raw place here. What impressed me here is the huge trees and the small we are in that forest. Yes, Mr.
George Dorn, do you ever shoot in high dynamic image or high dynamic range? Do you ever shoot that?
I do, but I don't use the high dynamic range software. High dynamic range is when you take a picture and the brightest light is too bright, the darkest is too dark, so you can't really take a picture that covers both. So you take a picture that's different, or two or three pictures that are differently, exposed. When I do that, I pick the one that's best, and then I blend in the information from the other pictures that are identical but differently exposed, instead of using the software. This one and the next are street, did you?
No, I'm scratching.
Street photo in Miami. This is South Beach, a construction site. The fence is covered with the legs and the sidewalk. And I took many pictures before I caught one that I liked.
Don, did you put those background people in there?
I just said it's a construction site. The background was a advertisement
Okay,
on the fencing of the construction.
okay.
This is, by the way, with a Leica camera, borrowed Leica camera, and JPEG original. This one is in Little Havana in Miami, same trip, street photo. I saw the woman coming. I was on the other side of the road, traffic. There was a traffic light there. I had to wait until the traffic light changed. And I ran across and just got her in the right time for this location. I took 3 or 4 more pictures, and it's her back, and the background is not good, but I got this one. These except for that, for the one where I asked, that reflection picture, I have not done anything with that yet. The others have all been in competition, and either with a yellow or with a blue ribbon.
Was this taken with a Leica camera?
This one was taken with my camera. The first day I went out with the Leica camera, and the second day I chose mine. This is Tortugas, Dry Tortugas Island, west of Key West, with a Fort Jefferson there. I took this picture. It also, I have it here from a competition. It did, in the print competition, did get this flying back from Tortugas Island to, of course, with Leica you fly, you don't go back home. And we flew back, and it was beautiful, beautiful flight. I call it a seascape, and just beautiful from the plane. Yes?
Did you keep the,
Georgia, right?
Georgia Mosier, did you keep the plane wing in the air to let us know you took it from an airplane? Because sometimes, you think about, well, should I edit it out? But I like the wing in that.
I don't know. Most of I have lots of other airplane flights. I take the wing in, and I keep it.
I like it.
I don't know. It gives a dimension. I was visiting in Connecticut. That's a Connecticut harbor. Out for dinner in a open restaurant, and just jumping up during the dinner to take pictures. And I like this serene, I like the lighting, and it's very close to the original.
Where in Connecticut?
Stonington Harbor. This is the one with 3 pictures. About a year ago, a cold wave coming in, a cold front coming in, and I took pictures, about 100, and not a single one that I liked. Then I noticed in one of them this pattern, this front pattern of the wave, I liked it. So I took another one of my pictures where I liked the sunset, not too good, but reasonable. And I put them together, and it was too bland in between, so I put a third one. The interesting thing about this is that the picture, the sunset, is a wide-angle lens, and the wave is a telephoto lens. Those of you who know the millimeters, it's a 70 to 200, set at 70, the widest, for the wave at the front, and a 10 to 20, set the widest 10 for the sunset. But it's very easy with the water because there are no marks for the eye to pick up where I did the landing. This is another little older picture. I sold so far 2 pictures, both in Marco Island. I exhibit. This one sold. I titled it Silent Violin. The Croatian village in off 41 near Fort Myers. Towards, I think it's in Estero. Through a window. You couldn't go into the room, but this room was set up a museum-like. The musician of the village lived there, and I took it through the window. I liked it for the message. Of course, this was Fifth Avenue.
Or Bayfront?
Pardon me?
Bayfront or Fifth?
Fifth.
Okay.
So is that what you bought from the, some of your winnings?
I bought it used from you. Don't remember. Yeah, it's reflections old and new. The car is a semi-antique car, and the new is the Fifth Avenue buildings reflecting on it. This was not taken. This is a JPEG picture that I took in Vienna, a little camera traveling picture. The trip was not a photo trip. A Nikon Coolpix camera, and of course I put it on a rail to stabilize it. The color picture originally, I still like the color, but the floor was brown. And I like the color because the gold and all those colors around, beautiful colors, all ruined by the floor. And I haven't figured out how to fix it yet. Another Vienna picture, the what is it?
Lipizzan.
Horses. I couldn't go in, didn't have the time. There's an area where you walk by and you can see them about the width of a football field. They are on the other side in their stables. So this was 700 millimeter telephoto handheld. So it's not sharp, but I liked the feeling because it's. I don't know whether it was love or biting the ear, but whatever.
They are stallions.
Ooh.
Now, this is the one my daughter loves, and asked me to get her a big ring. I don't. It leaves me cold, but it's an interesting picture. It was taken at a private home that gives a Christmas party to the club members, and they live in the estates.
How true are those colors?
You will see, every color is true, but amplified. In other words, not as bright, somewhat taller. But the impression you get, again, the impression why you would at all take a picture of this animal was its color. So that's why I amplify the color. This one, it's 2 weeks old. Our club, not the tiger, the picture. Our club does free service to nonprofits. We go out and take pictures for their promotions. So they let us in as a special arrangement, and as a result, I could go in, you know, these double areas where there's a fence, and then you have to stay about a yard behind
Yes.
as a visitor. So I could go to the fence. And they had little places where they cut out just one wire so that you could take a picture. I had my camera there, was trying to get something, boom, I was knocked back. I could not grab because that would be lunch if I grabbed on the wire. So I grabbed something else, straightened myself. By that time he was away and coming back. So for that one I was prepared. And I have a series as he approaches, and then this is about 1 foot before he bumped. But that time I was prepared for the bump. I'm sure I was not intended for lunch, but for just get out of my space. I don't know how many of you saw 2 days ago, I saw on the TV news an elk bumping a photographer.
Yes.
Same scene, except that he didn't have the fence. But I like this one. This one did not come out quite as sharp as it is here. I did a lot of work to make it look a little sharper. It's not easy. Don't count on editing or developing to make something sharp, much sharper. It's very, very hard. And you can make it duller, you can make it for feeling of depth duller, but you cannot make it.
George and Mosher, I find taking pictures of moving animals difficult. Did you put this on a burst mode as the cat is coming to you?
Yes, I did have it on the burst mode, boom, 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 boom. But so as you will see, it was good progression. In that sense, yes, it was lucky that it is that sharp.
Because, I mean, what I really like is the fact that the movement is emphasized because his left foot is drawn
It's up in the
back.
air.
So you know he's coming at
And
you.
he's leaning a little bit. I straightened it a little bit, but still that lean. When you take animals, whether it's a bird or whatever animal, the most important thing to photograph is the eye and the sharpness of the eye. And always, always try your best to get the eye sharp, because that saves the picture.
I agree with George Mosher. I agree with eye,
Okay.
but also ears, because I had a professional photographer take pictures of a dying dog for me.
Yeah.
I mean, she was fine, but I knew I was going, but he cut her ears off because he didn't know that that is so much of the animal's expression. You kept the ears.
Yeah, some of it is luck, okay? But you always have to work to be lucky. So this one, I can show, I have the originals for all of these, but it's not worth showing this one. But it filled the picture horizontally. I cropped it like this, but that's the full picture. I did not have anything to crop. It just came in this way. This is back at Lakes Park. The reason I included this, yes, it did get a ribbon back then, but what happened, I took it to the club for a critique session. And I was taking busy notes as people after people pointed out what's wrong with this picture. And I could hear nothing else but bad critique. Then someone whom I respected stood up and said some other introductory words commenting on the other comments and said, this is a beautiful composition. So by exposing my picture to that critique, I went home, I had the notes, I fixed everything they said was wrong with it, and then I submitted it. And I think critiquing and what's the best value you get from the club is either clubs that can take and critique the picture. They don't know, people don't know whose picture it is. It's just critique. Only the maker of the picture knows. And also I have friends with whom we exchange pictures before we submit, and we critique each other's. And that's the most valuable, one of the most valuable pieces you get from the clubs. So that's the pictures. Took a little longer than I intended, but on the other hand, I made enough comments that there are very few of them that you would be interested in seeing in its original form. The first one, I'm not going to ask you. I'm going to do, but do you recognize this?
Yes, I know what one it
It's
is.
kind of dark.
It's kind of, but that's the
That's the
picture.
Miami sunset.
No, that's the Everglades sunset.
Oh,
Yeah, the Everglades sunset. That's the one. And the reason for that is, as you can see, I have detail in this area. Okay? And if I did not underexpose this picture, I would not have any detail in this area. So by doing some very little, I'm not going to do it for quality here, but just to show that a lot of things can be changed, including color of the trees. I'm not taking it to full length, but you can see that this area of the picture is now almost what I showed before. The water has some life in it and reflections. The greens are not quite there, but can be worked in different ways. And there again, this area can be worked slightly differently. By the way, the tools I'm using, Jim Noonan, about months or two ago, showed here in the club how to use these tools.
He showed lightning, didn't he?
But this is Photoshop. If you use Photoshop or Photoshop elements, the raw picture, camera raw, Adobe camera raw, and you can open JPEG pictures in that camera raw as well as the raw pictures. That's a front end to Photoshop and Photoshop elements, and that is identical to Lightroom. The way it looks is not, but every slider is the same slider. The software is the same thing except for fitting in, integrating with the program.
So
What Jim showed is exactly the same controls that I have here.
So Lightroom, Photoshop, and Photoshop Elements all have the same raw program.
Except for full features. As Adobe does, the latest one is full feature. Some features are not there earlier, and Elements only have a subset of the features. But the main features are there. Yes?
Kathy Romano. If you want to work in your original raw picture, but you want to save it, in other words, you want to keep the raw one original so that no changes happen, you want to save the one that you just made all the
Yeah.
changes in, what are you saving it as?
Another advantage of the raw pictures is that you cannot change them. You cannot change them.
Okay.
Everything that you do is recorded as an action when you develop the picture. And if you say print, then the software will do exactly the same thing what you did, so the print comes out to what you edited or developed the thing for. But the original picture is not touched.
Okay, but so you don't save the work you just did as, say, a JPEG or a
Yeah,
TIFF?
it's called XMF, something. A sidecar file. It's saved as a text file next to the image file. And it has to be in the same folder,
Thank you.
and it's not changed. And the other thing is, when you edit in Photoshop Elements or in Photoshop, there are techniques that are called non-destructive techniques. What you try to do is to do everything as an added element as opposed to changing the original picture. The analogy I could give you is, how many of you as a child had the urge of drawing a mustache on your aunt's picture somewhere? Now, if you did that, you got in trouble. But if you did that on the glass on top of that picture, people smiled and washed it off from the glass. Well, the same thing here. When you do it to your picture, you ruin your picture unless you superbly know what you're doing. But if you do it in a non-destructive way, the original picture never gets changed. And not only that, you can go back to your steps. And if at the end you discover that you made a mistake at the beginning, you can go back to it without losing anything, adjust it, and fix it. So that's why it's worth learning the non-destructive techniques.
Bob, when you said you lowered the exposure when you took the picture, right?
Yeah.
Much?
The best way to judge is to understand what a histogram is and use the histogram. I don't know the inexpensive cameras, but I think today every digital camera has a histogram. And the histogram is a graph that graphically shows where your pixels are in terms of darkness and lightness. And if you look at the back of your camera, you have two ways of finding out whether you are underexposing or overexposing. One of them is learning and understanding the histogram. And you look at it, it's black and white, and you see right away whether you underexposed, overexposed, or exposed it right. The other one is most cameras have what's called highlight when you review the picture, and it will flash black dots in the areas where you overexpose. And that's a very simple and powerful way. And what you do is you take some test pictures, and in this case, And you go down with the exposure until I didn't get that signal, except for a very small place here, the sun. That's impossible to do. So obviously, there's no detail here, but there's detail everywhere else. And I knew that when I took the picture by looking at this highlight image, where it comes up. You can see it, it's flashing black on your picture, and wherever it's flashing black, it tells you overexposed, you have no detail. And then you have to lower your exposure. Any particular picture anyone would be interested in discussing what?
The animal, the gecko, the lizard.
The gecko, okay. The title of that picture is Push-Ups. So as you see, I've done not too many things. This white area was distracting. A little bit of exposure compensation brings quite a bit up. And clarity is a very, very powerful tool, which works much like contrast. And here it was overexposed. This is an ugly spot from the sun. Other than that, the entire background, the light areas take a little away attention from the center point. So I made the wood darker, and I made these whitish areas darker. By the way, who uses Photoshop here? If you set yourself here in this panel, open in Photoshop as Smart Object, then down here instead of Open Image it says Open Object, and when you open the picture in the traditional Photoshop window, you get a little square in that. If then you control click in this area, you can make a copy. It's like an alias. So in this case, instead of making another alias, you don't copy the alias picture, you copy the picture itself. So now I have two separate ones, and I can click on this, and I can go back here to the original and make a different kind of exposure, something like this, where the dark areas are darker, not quite that dark, I'm kind of I'm maybe exaggerating, but now when I take this back, I have these two layers here, and with a simple mask, if I can find my tools. You can bring back the bright one. So you have the dark background, obviously not as roughly, but and you can have the the right animal, and you can vary the ratio between where it was and where it is. So, and those are some of the tools that you can do in Photoshop to alter the background. Generally, the background you want to be at best not affecting the subject. At worst, not affecting the subject, not distracting from the subject. At best, to be complementary. Complementary color or complementary darkness or lightness, something that helps the subject, which is obviously not the background here, but the animal. So, any other question on this one?
Yes. Good, Jeff. How many hours would it take you to make the pictures that have won the awards?
Oh, the hours are, I'm retired. So I'm not blocking. I work on very few pictures. I like to have a few good pictures, and if I like the picture, I can lots of hours. But not as one run. Once I put gaps in, because you come back to your picture 2 days later, you see it differently. So I always put some gap in and come back.
Bob?
Yes,
Where
Bob.
do you get your pictures printed at? Where do you have them printed at, or do you print them yourself?
I print up to 13 by 19, I print myself. So the prints I submit to competition, I print myself. And it's an Epson.
You calibrate your monitor and your printer and so forth?
So far, when I calibrated, I ruined it. I tried to calibrate my computer, the old one, and luckily I was ready to get a new iMac, which is perfect. And, but I have not calibrated. I do have a color monkey, and I do intend to get to the point where I can do it because it's very important. But so far I have not been successful with it. Yes, George.
George, what kind of a printer do you have that will print that size?
The model is R3000. Epson Stylus Photo R3000. 13-inch wide printer.
What?
Epson.
That's
That-
it?
Epson desktop printer. Any other questions? Jerry, is it the water too?
We're fine.
Yeah.
We've got about
So,
10.
yeah. Let's see where yes,
I'm just, I'd like to see those tiger shots where, if you can show there's several of them, him
Oh, yeah.
approaching.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. That's cool. That would
Yeah, he had his eye on the lunch.
Koviachobi is the name of the place in this estates here.
And I have a general question on the, I don't know if you played around much with the new iPhone 5S camera,
No.
but those cameras are getting pretty sophisticated, and it just seems inevitable to me that they are going to replace point-and-shoot cameras completely in the next 3 or 4 years. And you wonder at one point, like I used to have an SLR, and of course I'm not a professional, but I just don't have one anymore because when I did have one, 9 out of 10 times I was grabbing a point-and-shoot because I didn't want to lug it around.
Well, absolutely, and that's my situation too. If I was not invested that heavily in expensive, heavy equipment, Today, I will very seriously look at what are called the mirrorless SLRs.
Mhm.
And they tend to be coming up in quality and perfectly close to the traditional SLRs. And I would look very seriously.
Isn't that Sony line?
Fuji, Sony uses Zeiss, German Zeiss lenses. Panasonic uses Leica lenses. Nikon and Canon have their own excellent lenses. So those are the five.
Mirrorless.
Those are the five brands that if I go for quality, I would kind of stick with. Fuji, Sony, Panasonic, Nikon, and Canon. Not necessarily that order. Yes?
I have a question. I've seen you have a lot of pictures, and I've printed a lot of pictures, and I wonder what you do with them. I mean, is there some place to give them away, or how do you clean out
Yeah.
the printed pictures?
Well, my solution is that out of 100 pictures, maybe I take 2 or 3 that I really like and I develop. And the others stay electronically in my computer. I don't if I print, it's for competition or exhibit. I have a few of them here. The projector is not that good, but I have a few there that you can turn on the light maybe and come at it. I just wanted to show you this. This is the reflection, the original, again, somewhat underexposed. So here it's exposure itself will bring it up. But you can see that I got the overexposed signals, and at that point I didn't know that I will crop it. So I went down with the exposure. And here from the trees you can see the water better. I think I undercropped that picture, the one that I showed the way it is. Because so few of you got the dimension. Yeah. So thank you for the feedback. Well, that's it, and we'll see you.